I think in Chinese student, if you major in sociology, I think in China, Durkheim has, you can find many valuable comments in Durkheim's social thought. When I visit Beijing University 2000, I think 3 or 4, I met a sociologist in Beijing University sociology department. I got really shocked. In Beijing University, what sociologists are doing at that time is almost the same Korean sociologists are doing in 1960s and 70s. All they are doing is gathering some data, population growth, and some many raw data about some people, not lay people, their life situation, working conditions. And so they are producing the same kind of knowledge, data, good for the governing that working people. So I think social development and social statistics. I have many cases. I emphasize that, Statistics is the science of the state. That's the meaning of this word. This is a compound of state plus tics. Means this is science. So statistics means the science of the state. That means if the state or company or some institution, when they need some statistics, that means that organization, whether it's state, the corporations, or some institution, they need some knowledge over which they're governing. They need some data. That's statistics. So I'm telling you, statistics is not neutral. It has always strings behind it. Somebody needs some knowledge in order to govern, in order to manage, in order to sell, in order to have gain money. Statistics. The figure, that's not neutral. Statistics is that the science of the state. What is population in statistics? Let's have some word game here. What is population? This is in state level. Statistics. What is this? This is right? I major in historical sociology. I have always interest in the origin of some institutions, some disciplines. Statistics is a science of the state. After modern state was formed, was instituted, constituted, they needed some knowledge when they govern their own people. They wanted to know, they needed to know how many people were in their own territory, their age differences, how many cows and cattle they have. In order to govern the country, that territory, they need statistics. Statistics is closely related with the governing. So when you have some opinion poll or some try to gather some statistics about some issues or some problems, don't think of yourself you are just doing scientific research. Actually, you are serving for the power, the state, or some ruling class. So whenever I met some sociologists who has excellent skill in statistics, and they think all I'm doing is just scientific research, I have no interest in politics or in money. No, that's not the truth. Statistics from the beginning was the science of the state. It was supposed to be serving for the state. Understand? Statistics. So when you modernize your country, you industrialize your country, you need statistics. Statistics in your hand, all the figures. Any questions? Can you get the difference between industrialism and capitalism? The difference between Durkheim's social thought and Marx and Engels' social thought? The difference? For example, from Durkheim's point of view, without any, remaking, reconstructing our social structure, from Durkheim's point of view, there are many chances to improve the social condition by re-educating or inventing new norms, overcoming anomy. You can integrate your own society. In Korea, there are many committees under the president. They try to harmonize, they try to integrate our society. They diagnose, they analyze, we are so class divided, locally, regionally divided. So there are age, division, there are gender division, and so on. So they try to integrate. But if you are Durkheimian, you can show many remedies, many recipes how to overcome that fragmentation, that confrontation. But when you are a Marxist or you are some radical, social theorist, there is no way you can overcome that contradiction, that conflict, without fixing this class division. That's why in Korea nowadays there are many discourses about welfare state, welfare. I just skipped there. Let's turn to page page 8 of our textbook. page 8 of historical sociology. Here, our author, Philip Abrams, is talking about making sense of welfare state, welfare. He's talking about four actually approaches to explaining the emergence of the welfare state. Page 10, page 11. The development of social welfare, label them respectively as the Enlightenment theory, the necessity theory, the action theory, and the power theory of social welfare. It's very interesting. Philip Abrams, he tried to explain the making of welfare state in four different approaches. He just discarded the three Enlightenment. What's the second one? Necessity theory, the action theory, and he sided with the power theory of social welfare. He combined the action and the structure. And read carefully through this part how the author, Philip Abrams, tried to explain the emergence of welfareism in comparison with many different cases. And he focused on the English case. Which one is the best explanation? He sided with the power theory. The essence is that from the Enlightenment theory, is that intellectuals or politicians who really love their people, and they really, think of the lay people's, the working class situation very miserable, and they try to give them something. That's the beginning of the welfareism and welfare state. But when you think from that line, why the other countries? Why not the other ages? Why that people and that era, that welfareism came into existence? If they focus on the effect of the intellectuals and the initiative of the politicians. So that Enlightenment theory lacks. And it just emphasizes the initiative of some actors. And the opposite is the necessity theory. Why they need welfareism, welfare state? Because the poor people, they need some state support. It's not from the benevolence of the intellectuals or the have class, but from the necessities of the have not class. It just emphasizes the structure. Why the origin of the welfare state? If there are no welfare state out there, the poor people will starve to death. So they desperately need the welfare state. That's the necessity thesis. They solely emphasize the structure. In the third, the action theory. And action theory and the power theory is almost the same, but whether the action theory, they emphasize there are many interest groups, they have some give and takes, and there are many struggles, and there came suddenly the welfare state. It emphasized not only the actors but also some social structure. But it lacks some historicity. Yeah, he is siding with page 14, the line 5 from the bottom. This author, Philip Abrams, he buys that the power theory of social welfare. I read that he sided with the Frank Parkin. Here, in this aspect of social process that the power theory of social welfare seeks to take up, in contrast to the action theory, the power theory of social welfare emphasizes the extent to which action does, after all, take place within a social structure, and that one of the things we mean by social structure is power. The fact that, page 15, any particular group of people get is not just a matter of what they choose to want, but of what they can force or persuade other groups to let them have. Thus, Parkin in Class Inequality and Political Order, it was published in 1972, treats the welfare state not simply as the outcome of pressure on the part of groups of reformers, but rather as an expression of what powerful opponents of reform chose to concede to that pressure. Demands for measures that would redistribute income between groups in society did not succeed. Rather, the measures that were introduced provided benefits for the poor by transferring income within the life cycle of the poor themselves. The point about such measures is that not that they were preferable to the reformers, but that they were acceptable to their opponents. You know, nowadays there are big controversies about the social welfare in Korea. The ruling party and the opposition party, they are talking about when they seize the presidency, they will introduce social welfare program. All the political parties, they promised and they showed their own version of the welfare state. But in my opinion, you know, that's just wide of the mark. It makes no sense. When you pay attention to historical origin of the welfare state, you come to understand that it is not that the political forces, social forces, they push the introduction of welfare state. It's sure, you know, there are some reformers, they should initiate the introduction of welfare program. But here, Frank Parkin, almost two generation ago, he's talking about it is not just the demand, but the heavy class, they have some reasons to acquiesce. I will read here again. The point about such measures is not that they were preferable to the reformers, but that they were acceptable to their opponents. And the powerfulness of those opponents was the decisive factor. Without denying the role of theorists in formulating reform ideas or the relevance of social conditions in providing context in which reform of some sort can be made to seem necessary and urgent, and while recognizing purposive action as the dynamic element of social change, the power theory thus achieves a more balanced and realistic sense of the relation of action and structure than any of its rivals, one in which the forcefulness of both is recognized. It is better history and better sociology. It answers questions which other approaches leave unresolved, and it gives us a framework within which we can understand both the pattern and the detail of the particular social process, the making of the welfare state, with which we are concerned. Actor and structure. From Philip Abram's point of view, if you just emphasize actor alone, it's not that good theory. If you just emphasize the power of the structure, social structure, political structure, economic structure, or some, the mental structure, it's just one-sided. You should pay attention to the action and the structure, and the dynamism, these two sides, you should pay attention to the process this dynamism just unfolds. That's a good history and also good sociology. I told you historicity, globality, and reflexivity. Our society, philosophers and literary critics, they are very good at reflexivity. But it's just retrospective. They knew that end result, and they have many explanations. What if? What if? But as a social scientist and making our own history in our own society, you should manage and put all the elements on the scale and weighing them balanced. So in giving explanations, the origin, the emergence of welfare state, Philip Abrams, he just discarded, he just leave Enlightenment theory, necessity theory, and action theory. It leaves much to be desired. So he chose the power theory. It's not only the people who initiate their welfare program, but also the power holders in Korea, the rich people. It's appropriate for them to accept. If they think it just violates their class interest, they will reject. There's no welfare program at all. Welfare program is very, underdeveloped. So, in my opinion, contrary to many of my colleagues, in my opinion, I'm not siding with the ruling party. It's better for Korean people to introduce welfare program, choosing ruling party. It's better. It gives them much more opportunities to install the welfare program. If the opposition party, they will win the presidential election, it's very hard to implement the welfare program because the ruling party, supported by the heavy classes, they will veto all the programs. According to this power theory, it's not just reform initiatives, but also the heavy class, they got persuaded. They have that mind. They will just give more money, more tax. So for the welfare program, for the launching of the welfare state alone, I think Park Geun-hye is better choice. I think most of you don't agree with me. I think so. Park Geun-hye is anti, welfare program, and the opposition party is much more pro welfare, inclined. No? I think that's common sense. The opposition party is much more, inclined to implement the welfare programs compared to the ruling party. That's, I think, common sense in our society. But as a social scientist, sociologist, historical sociologist, I think when you look back, under what condition did they introduce welfare program? Not only in advanced capitalist societies like Sweden and Denmark. I pay my attention to so-called Bismarckian states like Germany, Spain, and Italy. They are, underdeveloped welfare state, but they also introduced the social welfare program. I'm just sick at the social welfare experts. They are talking about we will introduce this kind of program, that kind of program. I'm asking them, show me that roadmap or the method to reach that goal. I'm not Aristotle or Archimedes. If they give me some leverages, I don't know, I can just move the globe. What I'm saying is, everybody, every political party and political faction, the ruling party and the opposition party, they are talking about social welfare. But when you look back on the emergence, the making of welfare state in Western countries, the so-called the ideal welfare state like Sweden is very exceptional. The external factors and internal factors are very exceptional. They are not normal. They are very abnormal. Very, exceptional cases, not normal cases. So don't talk about the Sweden model. That's just beyond our imagination. Their global context and social context, their political situation, their economic level is totally different from our society. Don't think of Sweden as our model, our goal. Let's think about Germany. That's my argument. I don't have time to write down my article, but this is my insight. Whenever I join some discussions about the social welfare state or social welfare programs, it really, as a historical sociologist, I know that historical origins. It seems to me as if, the so-called social welfare experts, if you give me enough money, I will just implement this program, that program, and cover all the people. That's their approaches. And what I'm asking you as a historical sociologist is that under what conditions can I do that? Can we introduce and implement social welfare program in Korea and also in China? That's the power of historical sociology and historical sociological imagination. It's not just wishful thinking. We have some retrospective and prospective. When we look back on our history, it's not we wanted to go back to our history in some time. We should learn some lessons from historical cases. Under what conditions? By whom? By what kind of negotiation? What kind of political process do they succeed in implementing social welfare program in their own society? That's the lesson we should learn from that cases. Everybody's just talking about, we want welfare state. My question is, in China, any scholar or any political leaders talking about welfare state in China?
Hello?
Do you have any chances to hear about social welfare state in China or welfare program in China?
Nowadays, we are discussing the medical welfare very heatedly in China. Especially the common fund of medical care.
Mm-hmm.
The reform of this fund,
Mm-hmm.
very heatedly.
Yeah, I see.
Actually, there is such a very dilemma phenomena in China that if you unfortunately have to the hospital, chances are you will spend a lot of money in the hospital. The medicine charges are extremely high in China.
So now they are discussing how to reform the cost.
Yeah.
I see. Philip Abrams is talking about the origin of welfare state in England. There are many approaches, many theories about explaining that the beginning of a welfare state in England. He sided with the power theory because that's that's the truth. In reality, in history, that's the way how the welfare state was established in England. It's not just initiative from the above, intellectuals or politicians, or not just the necessities of the poor people. It's a power struggle between the political groups and classes. And the lessons learned in that introduction, the implementation of welfare state in England, is that there should be some reformers who initiate that welfare reform, welfare program. But it should be appropriate for the ruling class, the heavy class, to acquiesce. They can accept that kind of reform. It's okay. They pass that bill, that law. They can accept that amount of reform. It's not just necessities from the poor people, the mass in general, or some initiative from above, very benevolent, very philanthropic guys. That's not enough. There should be some class negotiations, give and take processes. And he put his emphasis on the ruling class should acquiesce. They should consent. They should accept the reform program to introduce the welfare state, implemented welfare programs. That's the point. So that's the reason why I'm talking about it has better, expectation under the ruling class to introduce the kind of welfare reform. When the Park Geun-hye, she is now the leading candidate in Korean politics to run for president in coming presidential election in Korea. It's December, right? December 18th, 19th? It's 8 months from now. In Korea, the common expectation is the opposition party, the Democratic Party, the members of the Democratic Party are much more inclined to implement the welfare program. But in my opinion, as a historical sociologist, I think that social welfare reform could be, easily implemented under the ruling party, under Park Geun-hye. I'm talking about our historical experiences. During Kim Dae-jung regime and Nomu현 regime, there is no question about that. They are reform-oriented, right? But all through their reign, they cannot pass that reform-oriented bills, laws, because huge opposition from the opposition party. That's the Grand National Party at the time. That's the ruling party at the time. They are opposition party. What I am saying is, I'm not saying that, I really think the intention of the lawmakers in opposition party now, the Democratic Party, they're much higher. I don't have any suspicion about their intention. But what I'm saying is, as a historical sociologist, that power relationship in our political scene, political field, political institutions, if the opposition party win the presidential election, and they try to implement social welfare program, they cannot make any, negotiation with the ruling party led by Park Geun-hye. Huge opposition they cannot overcome. That's what I'm saying. If I'm the member of the Saenuri party, the ruling party now in Korea, there's no reason we consent to implement, to enlarge our social welfare program. Why should I? It will become the political gain of the Democratic Party, not our party. That's the political structure. So in that sense, I think, I'm not a fortune teller, but in that sense, I think it's much more preferable for Korean people to vote for Park Geun-hye in order to implement welfare state in Korea? If you have any challenges or oppositions, think over and tell me next week. You know, if you study and think over some issues, some problems, in some cases, our logical and historical conclusion is very different from the common sense. Let me have some last question. In Germany, who do you think introduced the welfare state, welfareism in Germany? Is it initiated by Liberal Party or Radical Party? In Germany, who initiated that welfare program in Germany? Chinese student, do you know? In Germany, who introduced welfare program in Germany? Do you know? Yeah.
It is initiated by Hitler.
Hitler? Long time before.
And then, after the World War II, it was primarily introduced by the Chancellor Adenauer.
Adenauer, yeah. After Second World War, true. That's true, yeah. But initially, the welfare program was introduced in Germany by none other than the Prime Minister, Bismarck. Bismarck, he passed that anti-socialist law. He arrested all the socialists in his anti-progressive wing. He's very conservative, but he himself introduced social welfare system in Germany. Why? In order to win that war against all the neighboring European countries. Just think over, if you are a soldier from a very poor family background, you're from very remote mountainous area, how could you convince that soldier you are a member of this great nation? To garner, to pull the patriotism from the village people, the youngsters. Bismarck introduced social welfare system. If you fight for your country during wartime, I will take care of you in peacetime. That's the beginning of welfare state in Germany. So I think, I'm not an advisor to Park Geun-hye, but if I have chances to give her some advice, it's your time, the conservative moment, to introduce social welfare state in Korea. Park Geun-hye once said, that's the dream of her father, Park Chung-hee. Park Chung-hee really dreamed of welfare state in Korea. If she really mean that, she is, I think, the best actor in Korea to introduce and to implement social welfare in Korea. But that's a really revolutionary idea. The conservative political leader introduced welfare system, welfare state, established the welfare state in Korea, in Korean history. That should be a revolution in Korean politics. I'm not talking about some benevolence of the ruling class, the ruling party. I'm talking about how revolutionary ideas can change not only people, but also the system. That's my lessons learned from studying the origin, the beginning of welfare state in Western countries. Isn't it seem chaotic? It's so odd, it's so strange to listen to. Mine is very well, organized reasoning. In some cases, the revolutionary or reform-oriented people cannot reform at all. Other cases, people from very conservative, very have a class background can change, can reform, make some progresses in some areas. So in social world, you cannot achieve what you want because we are interacting in social conditions. We have constraints. We are making our history, not the circumstances of our own choosing. We are making our history under the conditions bequeathed, inherited from our ancestors. Until now, it is the progressive wing or the reform-minded people, they are talking about the welfare reform in Korea. What I'm saying is, conservative wing, Park Geun-hye faction, and I think there are much more, possibilities for that political faction to initiate reform programs in Korea. That's my expectation. That's my wish. I'm not saying, we should vote for Park Geun-hye or we should side with the ruling party. I'm not saying that. When we take into consideration the political landscape of Korea, it's better for the conservative wing. The chances, they have much more chances to initiate the welfare reform. That's what I'm saying. That's what Philip Abrams is talking about in his 4 theories explaining the emergence of welfare state in England. What I am saying is, I will just talk about this. This is my last remark on today. When you read historical sociology, historical sociologist's book, you learn many insights. They're not just confined to our past. Actually, it's our future. You can imagine, you can have some insight for our own future, not just past. That's what I'm saying. We should transcend chronofetishism and tempocentrism. That's the way we can reconstruct our own social world. In that sense, this is not historical sociology. It's also sociology of our own future, our own making. Thank you. See you next week.